Awesome. Recording. Yeah, I guess, what I think some people are still filing in, but I think, a good place to jump in, Sarah, would be to just have you introduce yourself, tell us about who you are as a human and runner, and why the heck we're having you talk about mental health.
Yeah. So hi, everybody. I'm Sarah Strong. I'm a licensed clinical social worker here in the state of Colorado. I've been a licensed social worker since 2017, but graduated in 2014 with my master's and was doing therapy prior to that. So I've been doing this for a while. I'm a mom of two kiddos, and I own my own private practice, Fireweed Counseling. So I see kiddos as well as adults and families, doing both telehealth and walk and talk or trail therapy. So that's my favorite, where we're out and talking on the trails or walking and hiking, because it's sort of like killing two birds with one stone, addressing some mental health stuff through conversation, and also doing things that we know can promote positive mental health, like being outside and moving your body and that sort of thing. And yeah, I've been working with Microcosm with Zoe since January of last year, and it's been amazing. Yeah, do the ultra marathon thing, and yeah, I don't know what else to tell you. I've lived all over the country, went to 14 different schools, so I'm like, definitely know a lot about transition and change, and being the new person. And yeah, so I kind of have like a fun life story myself. And so enjoy helping people navigate their own.
Yeah, I would love to know just a little bit more about what brought you to not just like social work and counseling generally, but also you have some pretty niche practices within that field as well. At what point did you realize that this was something you were passionate about, and like what specific areas you wanted to kind of drill down into as well?
Yeah, I mean, I really stumbled into it more than anything. I went to social work school thinking I was going to do like community organizing after I left the Peace Corps, because I was all about the power of community organizing after doing that for 2 years. And then I don't even really sort of remember how I started getting into some practicum experiences, field experiences, doing more clinical work, and really loved it. And then once I had my kiddo, my first son in 2014, I got a job working in schools. And so was seeing a ton of kids, and really like getting a lot of clinical experience really quick, and then started working with their parents and their families and getting the opportunity to do some of that education piece. So yeah, it's a lot of like, you know how it is, Zoe, like things that you don't even know how it happened, just this led to this, and all of a sudden you're like, oh, I'm kind of good at this, or I really enjoy this. This is filling my bucket a lot. And I kind of got lucky that I was doing a lot of working with kids and parent education at the same time that I had little kids. So I was like working in early childhood, literally teaching classes while I'm wearing a baby, like walking around the front of the classroom.
Major
So
street cred.
yeah. So the hands-on experiences that I've gotten, and then the clinical professional experience, like getting to merge those two, has been great.
Yeah, and if I can just divulge so I'm Sarah's coach, and 99% of our relationship will stay behind the iron curtain that is the confidentiality, but I will reveal that she has won a last man standing race in which she ran and won her first ever 100 miles. So, if that speaks to the power of being an amazing human and if that doesn't speak to the power of taking care of your mental health and just like persevering through a pandemic, I don't know what else would. But that's a little bit of Sarah in a nutshell. From the athletic side, I think sometimes it's very challenging to casually bring up in a conversation around a 100, but I will always be that friend that does it for you. So
thank you. Yeah, and I would say there are like a number of physically challenging experiences that I have endured in my life, and like emotionally challenging, that have given me, that like have helped that part of my like my backpack of skills, that like, yeah, I've endured some pretty rough injuries and some pretty rough things. And so like can definitely support folks through that piece. And also just the mental toughness piece as well.
Yeah, because injury, I think, is just one of the most challenging things an athlete can work through. You know, like I think it takes a much more special person to say stay kind and courageous throughout a long-term injury than it does to like finish an ultra or anything.
Yeah.
But, you know, I think kind of piggybacking off that, starting kind of at the 30,000 foot view, I would love to know how you define mental health and what that looks like for you, and how you like to talk about that, taking into account that like the thing we all have in common is athletics and being runners, and like how that fits in as well.
Yeah. So I really think about mental health as being the ability to manage stress. And I really look at mental health from like a nervous system perspective. So being able to manage and regulate the nervous system, and awareness of when the nervous system is dysregulated to be able to regulate it again. And so thinking about mental health, so yeah, as the ability to manage regular stress. So like the stress that we all experience in day-to-day life, which is healthy and natural and we need and grow from. And the ability to maintain relationships, and have a positive sense of yourself, and working towards, you know, sort of the end goal is self-actualization. So feeling like you're using your skills and your talents and you are the best version of yourself. That's like end goal, right? And I think that the way we think, or the way that mental health can be conceptualized often, is like you either have a mental illness or you don't. You either meet diagnostic criteria, because at the end of the day, insurance will only cover sessions for people who meet criteria for having a mental illness. And I think mental health is really more of a continuum. Like on one side, there are folks who really struggle, maybe need medication to be able to function in their daily life. And then on the other end of the spectrum, you might have people who are like just totally self-actualized and just like achieving constantly and never doubt themselves, and like, I don't know, are just amazing humans.
I do not coach anyone who has such a
right,
so far up Maslow's hierarchy.
right, but aren't narcissistic somehow, right? But so most of us fall somewhere along that spectrum. And as life throws stressors at us, you know, and those can be things like relationships, or relationships ending, or moves, or losses, or any sort of change, or, you know, a mass shooting or whatever. When those stressors happen to us, you know, we respond, that maybe we change where we are on the continuum. And so it's not like you either have mental illness or you don't. And I can tell you that today, and that means for the rest of your life, that's where you're going to fall on this continuum. It means like, okay, where are you today? What are the stressors in your life today? Are you able to manage those? You know, if we throw something at you tomorrow, what's going to happen? We're going to respond to that tomorrow, right? So mental health is really like, I think of the snow globe. So like if we are just like sitting there existing in our snow globe, like that's great, where you're just like content, the snow globe that's like on the nightstand, hasn't been touched, like fine. And then like if we shake it up, somebody with really strong mental health will be able to like sit through the shakeup. Wherever everything settles, we're going to feel good and we're going to be able to roll with it. And somebody who maybe needs more support, like that shakeup is just like really difficult, or it feels really long. And then when the snow settles again, maybe they have a difficult time responding to that new landscape.
Yeah. And then piggybacking off of that, how, again, understanding that we're all athletes here,
Right.
how does care for our mental health, how does that interact with and relate to our physical health and our ability to function as athletes? Like this is, you know, something I think everyone's had at least a little bit of experience with, or sometimes, you know, hopefully, or maybe you haven't had that experience. Like how does taking care of your mental health benefit you as an athlete, and like what are maybe some challenges specific to athletes that you see in terms of your work in mental health?
Yeah, so, you know, we always are told like exercise can be really good for supporting mental health, and that can be definitely true, but to a limit. So when I talk about nervous system regulation as being part of good mental health, some of that is being aware of when our nervous system is overloaded with stress. And so sometimes exercise can be like the opposite of what we need because our nervous system is already super impacted. And then when we run a hard effort or a long effort, we increase the stress hormone cortisol that's coming into our body, and we're not able to process it. So we're already flooded, and now we're just adding and we're not processing it. So that can be like a common thing that can be tricky for runners because we want to take care of our physical health, but our body, we also just have to be careful of like how much of that stress hormone we have. But I would just say like mental health and physical health are like, you can't separate them. It actually, I think that the whole idea of them being separate is just like an insurance company scam. It feels like, because your brain is your body. Like they're so connected. And so much of our mental health stuff is like a response to that stress hormone or a response to physical stuff happening in our body. And so most of the things that we do to try to maintain our mental health every day is the same stuff that we do to take care of our physical health. So sleeping and eating, resting, paying attention to our body, treating illnesses, just like being really in tune with what your body needs and loving on it. Because like, again, your body and your brain, it's the same. Your brain is part of your body. And so
brain's just along for the ride.
So you really just, you know, nurturing yourself is nurturing your brain and taking care of yourself. And I definitely like, I have noticed that when my mental health is better and it's all so connected. It's hard to like sort of separate it, but like I am running my best when I'm taking care of my body and my stress levels are low. I'm getting my, 8 hours of sleep. I'm eating. And so it's sort of like this nice thing for us as athletes and runners that if it feels too weird to focus on your mental health, then you can just focus on your body. And a lot of times that will have like positive effects on your mental health.
Yeah, I think a discussion I've really enjoyed seeing in the running and endurance space a lot more. And I think the person who has like just written about it the most eloquently is Alexi Pappas, and talking about her and I know you've read Bravey, and talking about her post-Olympics depression. The thing that allowed her to like actually come to terms with some of her mental health struggles was just like, all right, the brain is a body part. And in the same way that I like go to the gym, and then the same way I go to the PT, like I'm going to do prehab and rehab for my brain, and I'm going to treat it like the rest of me. So that way it really gets addressed and confronted head on, rather than siloing these two things that are just not, that are not in silos. And I hope that, we start to have a more nuanced understanding of both physical and mental health, and especially in the endurance sports space, because I think a lot of times our conversations have been just misguided or ill-informed, or just like not reflective of the reality that a lot of people lived in. I think a lot of it's also colored by the fact that like mental health care is not as accessible as it should be. So like you will see a lot of people being like, yeah, well, running's my therapy, it's cheaper. And it's like, dang, like it's not the same, like not the same thing. And I would love to know like what for you are those like rehab or prehab type things that you like to coach people through to help keep them engaged in their mental health journey, understanding again that we're talking a little bit more about like kind of the prehab, the like day-to-day, like the mental health, like tooth flossing kind of thing, rather than like crisis care.
So, right, totally. So the first thing is like, we have this built-in gift with our logs. So when I think about the best thing that you can do to take care of your mental health, it's having self-awareness of what impacts you, what creates stress in your life. So self-awareness is like the best thing that you can do. So to gain self-awareness, use the logs that you're already using with your coach and be super serious about those logs. Now, maybe you're not like comfortable being super vulnerable and putting it all out there, but take that time when you're logging to reflect on those questions and really ask yourself, how are you doing? In that serious serious way where you're not just like, yeah, no, I'm good, and like just trying to get through your day, because sitting there and reflecting on the fact that you're not good feels so uncomfortable. So you just move past it. So like, I really encourage, just because we have the built-in time for logging our runs, like let's use that time and say, okay, I'm serious about really reflecting on these questions and gaining my own awareness from them. So yes, it's information for your coach, but I encourage you to think about logging as information for yourself, really using that 4-point check-in and that journal entry. And again, like, not that you have to write it all in the journal entry, but like be thinking about it. And that's one thing I do every day. Like, I take my logging for my coach as my journaling for myself. And that's like a great mental health practice. If that format doesn't feel supernatural to you, journaling. If you have a person, talking to them, a therapist, a friend, like any sort of thing where you are processing your thoughts and externalizing them. Because when we have our thoughts just in our head, it's like an echo chamber. So you can't catch the errors or the things that you're telling yourself that are harmful or shameful or whatever. And so when you say them out loud, even if you're not saying them to anyone, just by saying them out loud or writing them down or saying them to a friend, you can catch those errors more. So that's the first most important thing I would say, is just like getting out your thoughts, feelings, whatever. Hold on, I have notes on this. And then mindfulness or meditation is also connected to the awareness piece. So I know meditation can feel like big and scary. So 3 minutes of mindfulness, which you can do on Spotify, like nothing. You don't have to invest in anything. It doesn't have to be like 20 minutes if stillness is like awful for you. But that 3 minutes can help regulate your nervous system and lower your cortisol levels. So when I talk about wanting our nervous system to be regulated and we're flooded with cortisol and we can't get it out fast enough, 3 minutes of meditation will actually help regulate your nervous system. So if you incorporate that every single day, you're just checking in with your nervous system and helping regulate it. In one form of therapy called DBT, there's this skill set called the PLEASE skills. The acronym does not work. I don't know how they like got away with this, but it's sort of, you can remember the PLEASE skills. So the first one, again, forgive me, this is not my acronym, but it's PL, and it's for physical illness. So I don't know how they get PL from that, but physical illness. So the first thing is make sure that you're checking in with your body. Does something hurt? Do you not feel well? Do you have a cold? Are you having symptoms? Like, runners are the first ones to say, oh, I'm going to run through this, or I'm going to ignore this. So the first thing of taking care of your mental health is taking care of your body and taking care of yourself if you're feeling illnesses. And the second part of that is taking any medications that are prescribed for by your doctor, medications that you're encouraged to take for your mental health. So that would be part of the PLEASE. And then E is eating. So like, eat healthy, put things that are nurturing to your body, which is not to say don't eat junk food. I eat a lot of junk food, but like, also make sure that you're loving yourself and taking care of your body. A, so again, with the PLEASE, A is avoid altering drugs, mind altering drugs. So, again, just like pay attention to the impact that they're having on your body. This is all about self-awareness. So taking care of yourself is knowing how things impact you. So when you drink, what kind of mood are you in the next day? How is it impacting your relationships? How is it impacting your sleep? I'm not here to tell you you shouldn't drink or use other mind-altering substances, but have awareness about it. S. What is S? Oh, sleep. Sleep. Zoe and TJ will tell you that all day. Sleep, rest, you need sleep. So one of the things that Alexi Pappas talks about in Bravey, when she sort of noticed that she was dysregulated and that mental illness was kind of coming on, was when she stopped being able to sleep. So when I talk about like physical illness and mental illness, we can't really separate them. It's similar with sleep. Like, you don't know which is first. Am I not sleeping because I've got some mental health stuff coming up, or is the mental health stuff making me not sleep? And sort of what, so if you're trying to focus on sleep, and so doing really good sleep hygiene, like turning off your phone a half an hour before you want to go to bed, taking a bath, winding down with scents, like a candle, things to just sort of prepare your body for rest so that your rest is more useful. And then the last E is exercise, which I think we all get. But I also encourage like small body movements, like stretching and yoga and things like that. Yeah, so those would be like the things I would most focus on: logging or journaling, meditation, and then just those physical things, so those please skills.
Yeah, I would love to know what questions you ask yourself when you're trying to prompt really good self-reflection and awareness. Like Sarah has incredible log entries. What are, I think sometimes maybe if we don't know the correct questions to ask ourselves, we may not be able to get to these answers that would help steer us towards the support we need, or just like, put us on that path towards like a little bit better, like self-care, mental health practices. So what are questions that you find helpful to guide those thoughts?
Yeah, that's a good, let me think about that. I forgot to say one thing that I do want to say. Another thing with the logs, when I talk about using as information for yourself, is to look back at your logs and identify patterns. And it can also help you if you're in a low point. So like if I'm having a really terrible day and it feels like it's never going to get better, and it's felt like this forever, and I just like am drowning in this sadness. And then I like to look back at my log, and like 2 days earlier I logged 3s, and like for the whole week before that I logged 3s. Then that makes today not feel so overwhelming. And you can also just look at, if you keep that log, you can look at it for evidence or patterns. Notice that like your 2s are always falling on Thursdays or whatever, like what are the days of the week you're having a hard time with. So be a scientist and like, look at all the evidence about yourself. So in terms of questions, gosh, that's, like I do a lot, like I tend to tell Zoe before I tell the other person, like, oh, I was really hard on my partner today, or I was like, gave my kids a hard time. I can like acknowledge it to her before I can acknowledge it to them. But sort of those questions of like, well, how was I today? Like, how was I to be around today? Did I feel like myself today? Did I have low energy at any point today? I'm kind of blanking right now, to be honest, but because it's hard.
Yeah, I like to ask myself, am I telling the truth about myself to myself?
Oh yeah.
Just to like make sure I'm not, either like trying to hide something from myself about how I'm feeling, or like, pain over like, was I snappy with TJ? Like, why is that? Is there a pattern, in what ways do these things correlate? And like just trying to be really honestly examine the deep why behind what I'm doing, and try to just be like, have a really neutral space where I can be like, I was just a douche to TJ because I was like tired and I was feeling bad about myself, and like he didn't deserve it. I can say that. Yeah. He's not here right now.
Totally. Yeah, I mean, I think that it depends on how like comfortable people feel with their own level of vulnerability in the logs, but like, I encourage, like, if you type something out and then you find that you want to erase it, like reflect on why you want to erase it. And then if it feels like, okay, well, it's not something I'm ready to let my coach know yet, like, can you let yourself know it in a real way, right? Like, are you erasing it because you're not ready to face it and you don't want to have that and so I really encourage that. Like, what are the things you might be erasing or not wanting to say? And the 4-point check-in, I think, is really good for that, that extra pause. Like I found myself just last week, like starting to type 3s. And I was like, well, actually my body was really tired today. I guess fatigue was low. And I guess I only slept a few hours last night. And I guess, and suddenly all the numbers went down, and it was just taking that extra second to like sit in stillness with myself. And I didn't even ask anything special other than just those 4 questions, but like, how does my body really feel?
Yeah.
And a lot of that is like that journey of self-awareness, which is like probably a year ago when I started working with you, it'd be like, I feel great, because I wasn't willing to sit down with myself and like do that process, because until you have the self-awareness, you can only be as honest as you are aware, I guess.
Yeah. And sometimes you have to like just create that space to be intentionally honest, right? So like maybe it's with your coach, maybe like you said, it's with a trusted friend or some other neutral and trustworthy person where you can just be like, oh, here's how I'm like really feeling, and you don't feel any pressure to like put on a performance of being like, I'm totally fine. Because that is just so, you know, like no one has time for that in 2021. We've all outgrown that collectively. So I think it's just, and it's a lot of these things like, you know, I mean, for me at least, they were things I never would have been able to say out loud if I hadn't had just like a space to do it, and an inviting person who was just like, you know, I'm not going to be able to like offer like necessarily advice, but I can listen. And mostly it's just having that space. I think that's so important in terms of like what we do through coaching. But on the other hand, at a certain point, you know, we have limits. And I'm curious about like what you think, like at what point people should be curious about seeking out extra support for their mental health journey. Like, are there things we should be looking for or thinking about, and what your perspective is on that?
Yeah. So, I mean, when I talk about the continuum, like most everybody falls somewhere on the continuum and is not like totally self-actualized. So like, I think most people can benefit from having, a person support them and give them strategies and just like be an objective third party or whatever. So there are lots of different things that people might get from therapy. And sometimes we might just be starting with like basic sense of safety, safety in somebody's environment or in themselves. And we might be working up to somebody or it might be somebody else who's like totally like, it feels like super great about like most things in life, but has like one thing that they want to work on. Right. So there can be any number of things. I would say that if there's like, you feel like you have thoughts that you can't tell anybody, and they are thoughts that make you feel ashamed, like that would definitely be like, yes, a therapist will totally hear the thoughts that you feel ashamed about and make sure that you know that you don't need to feel ashamed about them and help you work through them. If you feel like you have a lot of things that you want to talk about and need to talk about, and you have support people, but you don't want to burden your support people, and you just, they're dealing with things that you're not really dealing with, so you don't want to put more on them. And so then you're sitting with it by yourself, that might be a good time to reach out to mental health support. So I know people can feel like, well, I have so many friends, why don't I don't need to reach out to somebody else, but they're not really telling their friends about the big stuff. So if you're not talking to somebody about it, that's definitely something that a therapist can be there for. If you are experiencing any sleep disturbances or eating disturbances that last longer than 2 weeks, for sure you want to be reaching out to a therapist. So if you're unable to sleep, if you're having nightmares, if you're sleeping and like not able to wake up or not feeling well rested, if you're ravenously hungry or you have no appetite, both of those things would be, signs that somebody could probably support you. If you're just feeling like unfulfilled or inadequate or like a fraud, like you are in this job or in a role and maybe not everybody, maybe people don't realize you're not really qualified for it. You're qualified for it, but if you don't believe that, it could be really helpful to work with somebody who can help you realize it. Anybody who's experienced trauma, even if it was a really long time ago, if it's fresh, whatever, like definitely not something you have to deal with alone. If you want to have better relationships, I mean, there's just like 1,000,001 things that therapists can help with, but really like if you're looking for more, or you feel like there's just a problem that you're struggling with that takes up space in your brain, and like that part that is taken up in your brain, like depletes your energy to put into other things, that's a really good sign that you could use support with that problem.
Yeah, I love that framing of it. And I've just personally, to be super transparent, have benefited so much from, I've been in counseling for like years and years and years, and it's been something that's helped me just work through all manner of things. And I'm just a huge proponent of people, even people who like myself, conceive of themselves as like highly confident, capable people. There's obviously things that I just, like I'm a good runner, but like, yeah, I have a coach to try to get better, like, yeah, I want to like level up that mental health care. I want to make sure that I'm getting my brain, which is my favorite organ, is getting the best support it possibly can. And I think that, it's just like not for everyone, and like different things are going to work for everyone, different approaches, different people. But I think, it's worth trying, like, especially if you're curious, or again, if you have like even a single thought of like, just, that one thing that's like rattling around your brain that's like maybe keeping you from like getting to where you want to be at work or in training, or like it's getting in the way of relationships, or just like eating well, sleeping well, all those things. At one point I recommended to an athlete, I was like, hey, I love therapy, like you could try it too. And he was like, well, I'm not crazy. And I was like, well, I'm not either, like I don't think that's like us in the community don't use that word anymore. But also like the bar is not, you don't have to, it's not like only medicated people or whatever. It's a spectrum, and there's something for everyone, and it can change as you travel along that spectrum and voyage towards that place of better self-actualization. But like, I think, especially in terms of like my writing career, it's been incredibly impactful, and just, helping retrain some negative thoughts, self-defeating stories, and just making sure that I always have someone to be accountable to in terms of like these, mental self-care habits that can sometimes just fall by the wayside. Because sometimes mental health, I think, has a way of, or the way it manifests in me is like, the more stressed I get, the like less interested I become in doing those things that I know always make me feel better. So sometimes it almost feels like what I'm going through is this like weird parasite that just like really wants to cling to me and like try to convince me that like, oh, you can't get better, it's not worth it, or like you don't have time to, fix these things. And like, there's always time. And it's so great to have a neutral third party that's like, yeah, we've seen this, so like, let's re-engage with the things that we've seen be historically helpful. And I don't know, if you're curious about it, I would recommend everyone see what is available to them, and what like maybe what type of care resonates with them most.
When you talk about, when you're super stressed, then you're not doing the things that you need to do to best take care of yourself. When when our fear response is activated and our nervous system is in overdrive, we're getting that cortisol, it makes it so that we can't engage with the part of our brain that thinks through things and does the things like, hey, take care of us, or helps us make logical decisions and rational decisions. And then we're like mostly using that emotional part of our brain. So it's very common when you're stressed to not be able to do those. That's why I'm like I always tell people to put in alarms and like do those, that when you have the clarity, do the things preemptively, because you're not going to have the clarity when that like stressful week comes up or whatever.
Yeah, for sure. And we have a question from teammate Megan Smith. I'm curious about if there are ways to level up some of these prehab mental health strategies. I'm noticing that the longer the pandemic is going on, the less effective some of the usual techniques I'd use seem to be, and recognizing that we've still got a good few months of the pandemic life to live with this year, especially out in Canada with slower vaccine rollouts. Yeah, what advice do you have for maybe people who are just, interested in advancing that practice, and maybe digging a little deeper, particularly as we're like, we still got a little ways to go. So, maybe that original breathing practice doesn't quite have the mileage that it used to.
I think a lot of it sort of depends on what you're facing. So if the situation is like, if we're dealing with more anxious thoughts, I would really encourage some exploration of what are called automatic negative thoughts. And that's a really easy thing. You can Google, there's a website called trailstowellness.org, and it's geared to kiddos, but I actually think it's fantastic. They have lots of worksheets about automatic negative thoughts and how to identify and address them. And I think that a lot of what people are facing right now with COVID can be related to the anxiety piece. And so being able to challenge those thoughts can be super helpful. So that's one place I would start. And then I would, sort of what's the concern, or where's the pain, and so if it's like a connection piece, then like really focusing on that, like trying to identify, like exploring that self-awareness piece and seeing like, where am I really triggered? Where's really the emotional piece that I'm struggling with? And then really focusing the energy on that. So if it's again connection, then okay, is there a club I can join? Can I do those Zoom happy hours that we were doing last spring and then we stopped doing because they got burnt out on them, and then actually maybe they would be nice again. Or, you know, really just taking a look at what the triggers are. And honestly, too, if we are like getting 10 hours of sleep and eating super healthy and meditating all the time and talking about our feelings with our friends and journaling and just like doing it all, and we're still feeling super overwhelmed and really struggling, then that's a sign that, hey, I need a support that's a step up from my friends in my social circle. I need somebody who's got some skills here who can get me through this. Because like, if you're totally optimizing your body and you're like putting all that energy in and like doing it, then maybe some extra support could be helpful.
For sure. I think that's so important, is like knowing, again, at what point your own expertise about yourself has like what limits there are. Something I've learned so much from just following you and following the work you're doing at Fireweed are some of these really awesome, like kind of tangible, like skill sets, not only, you know, like your PLEASE acronym, but I think one that TJ and I now use a lot is the snack break. I was wondering if you could talk about the snack break and whatever little, like what other skill sets you find particularly useful, especially as it relates to running and being an athlete. Like I use snack breaks now in races because like I think that is such an excellent heuristic for like trying to, you know, re-regulate things.
Yeah. So a snack break. So it starts with that piece. Like I'll just, you know, be a broken record on self-awareness, so that when you notice in your body, so I'm in a mood or something's tight or like I'm not feeling myself, you're going to stop. So the snack is a mnemonic here. So you're going to stop and notice. And so noticing, it means non-judgmental. It's just attention. So what hurts? What am I feeling? What's the thoughts? So just like, again, when I talk about being a scientist, or you're just like data collecting here, non-judgmental data collection. And then the next is accept. So, okay, I'm super tired. I'm at mile 20 of a 50K and I'm really tired right now. We're going to accept that. We're not going to challenge it or like have feelings about it. We're accepting it, just noticing and accepting. And then we're going to be really curious about it. So I wonder, how long have I been feeling tired? When was the last time I ate? How long to the next aid station? Is anything in particular tired? What did I have last night? Right? So you're asking yourself questions that are going to inform your next move, maybe, but we don't want to be like too judgmental or how we're just like asking ourselves questions, but usually those questions give you information, right? Oh yeah, I didn't eat at that last aid station. It's been 45 minutes since I've eaten. I need a gel. Or no, I ate 5 minutes ago. I'm getting sick every time I eat. I'm not going to eat another gel, right? So you're just asking yourself questions and giving yourself information. And then the very last part of the snack break is to be kind to yourself. So whatever it is that you're noticing, so you're 20 miles into your 50K and you're exhausted, you're not shaming yourself about it. And you're not giving yourself a hard time about forgetting to eat at the last aid station. You're just like, okay, you need food. I'm going to love on you and give you food and get you to that next aid station. So just that kindness piece is a huge part of it. But that snack break thing, you can just apply to like everything. Like anytime the big emotions come up. And if you're noticing those big emotions in somebody that you have a relationship with. So if you're a parent and you're noticing those big emotions coming up in your kid, you're stopping, you're noticing that your kid's going crazy, you're accepting that they're going crazy. And then you're asking yourself questions like, what happened right before he started yelling at me? Did he eat a snack today? Like, you know, the same sort of thing applies. If we just like can let go a little bit of our emotional reaction and instead like do the information seeking piece, then we can respond to it a bit better.
Yeah. Are there any other tool sets that you find, I mean, not just useful for running, but also for being a human? This one is just one that's spoken to me particularly as a lover of all things mindfulness and snackfulness. I'm just wondering like what other, I don't know, what other tips and tricks, you know, can we maybe borrow from your counseling toolkit and apply to our, I mean, just general being a human, and like, goodness knows, we could all use an extra like hammer or whatnot in our toolkit at this point, but yeah.
So I'll just like try to think of the ones that are like easy phrases to remember, because that might just be helpful. So if you're in a relationship like with somebody or your parent again, connect and redirect being like a guiding way to respond to big emotions. So if you and your partner are sort of feeling frustrated with one another, again, you're noticing some big emotions in your kiddos, instead of responding from like about the facts, you want to respond to you want to focus on the connection. So you connect first and redirect second. So like that piece about, so we all as human beings want our emotions to be recognized. We want to be seen and heard. And so if you have somebody in your life who has a big emotion, you want to see it and hear it and let them know that they're being seen and heard. So I love connect and redirect. I like think about that all the time. I mentioned at the beginning I'm a mom, so that one comes up a lot. And then I had another one, but I'm trying to think. So if you're just really overwhelmed with an emotion in the moment, so to sort of jumpstart your nervous system, something that you can do is like orienting yourself to your space. And that will help ground you in your space, which brings you to the present moment, which is really important, because if you think about anxiety, it's always like based in worries about things in the past or worries about things in the future. And if we can just like be present, we are not worried about anything. So you want to ground yourself. And one way that you can do it that's super helpful for actually regulating your nervous system is to physically move your head and your eyes as you scan the room. So you would slowly just look around the room. And that piece is important. It doesn't feel important, but it is, to turn your head and move your eyes. And as you're doing that, you can just be noticing beautiful shapes. You want to eventually rest your eyes on something and just sort of explore it or notice it. And another thing that you can do either at the same time or a similar approach is to notice colors in your room. So a classic thing is to notice 5 blue things, 4 red things, 3 green things, 2, so on and so forth. And so those are things you would do in the moment if you were feeling overwhelmed and you like needed to get your, so for example, after the shootings in Boulder a couple of weeks ago, I was having a really difficult time going to the grocery store. And in fact, just driving up 93 in the direction of the store. And so I finally was able to go to the grocery store, but I had to do all of these things in the car in order to go to the grocery store. And so, when you think about mental health, it's not that our nervous systems are never stressed. It's that they're never stressed so much that they prevent us from doing the things that we need to do to move forward. Like my nervous system was stressed, but I could control it in order to get to the grocery store. Not at first. And so at first I was like, oh, this is a mental health worry until I can go to the grocery store, And so for a few days I couldn't, and then I could. And so that when I talk about that continuum, that would be an example of like, yeah, the Tuesday after a big incident, maybe my mental health looks different than it does 2 weeks later.
Is just like, if you were looking at like humans as a species, it would be troubling if there was no response to that level of stress, right? Like these things are, I liked something that helps me make peace with like some of the things in myself that are, I don't know, sometimes I guess the tough things to brag about is like the nice way to say it. Like the things that wouldn't make it into my Tinder bio are like thinking of them instead of like trying to be judgmental, just being like, it's maladaptive. Like maybe this would have been useful on the savannah, like several, years and years and years ago, but like living in Carbondale, a lot of these anxieties or like this like inability to like rein in the nervous system sometimes, like it's not bad because like it, would have kept my ancestors alive. Like I would have made a heck of like a huntress back in the day, probably. But like it's maladaptive at the grocery store.
Yeah. And, I think like I was saying, like the insurance system, this whatever system we have here has made it so, focused on pathologizing things that like, actually, like it might not even be maladaptive right away, right? Like people who are still struggling right now, like I think, your body's just protecting you right now. And like, that actually makes a lot of sense. But like our society is one that's like, okay, that was over. That was 2 weeks ago. Like you need to move forward. You need to keep going. And it's like, I think that, obviously depending on how long and everything, it does end up being maladaptive. But I think a lot of times we give diagnosis for things that are actually like, that was actually a really good way that your body responded to a really crappy situation. Like, good for your body and brain for taking care of you.
I think just for me, like being able to reframe things has helped me, never once has being judgmental about how you think or feel helped you move forward, right? Like you have to absolutely just meet yourself where you are and accept it. Because if you're just like down talking yourself for, experiencing being a human, that's just going to like add on to the, complicated salad of being a person, and like it doesn't help. It doesn't help you learn anything. It doesn't help you process. It doesn't help you move on. It just makes you feel additionally worse. And I know previously I've had like maybe mental habits of like being, I'm a self-judgmental person generally is the thing I'm working through, but the last thing I need to do is be like additionally self-judgmental about the things, internally that are going on.
Yeah. And that's a really, I think I probably see that more than anything else is just like how hard people are on themselves versus the standards and expectations that they have for other people. And I think sometimes like people might think somebody has like, oh, great mental health because they're like doing it all and they're like super successful at everything. But like actually inside, if they're a perfectionist or they don't feel like they're successful or they have imposter syndrome or whatever, and they're feel terrible inside, then they might not actually have good mental health. It just looks really great on the outside. And I think that, perfectionism and then avoidance. So like constantly canceling plans with other people, never really following through on those sorts of things, not responding to messages, and like not like putting yourself out there and then being like, yeah, I'm totally functioning, it's great, but like never like self-actualizing, never like getting outside of the comfort zone to like have richer friendships and relationships, or a job that is more in line with your values or what you want or something like that. And so sometimes we can get into that comfort position and then convince ourselves like we're so great, we're functioning so well, but it's actually just because we haven't pushed ourselves a little bit. So that's where that stress, you do need a little bit of that stress.
Yeah. Because then like, inevitably something will happen outside of your locus of control. And then you're like totally adrift because you haven't practiced any of your like, any of that coping, any of that flexibility. And that's not, a super great adaptation either. So yeah. I would love to know a little bit, like, again, if someone is interested about, pursuing counseling, therapy, or I like to euphemistically call it expanding your support system, just because I feel that brings more people into the tent than just being like, go to therapy, start meditating. What should they expect, or what might surprise them about engaging in that process?
Yeah. Well, so like you have the power, like you're buying and paying for a service. So you want to make sure that you connect with the person and that they're providing what you want. And so like, definitely you should interview more than one person, because there are different types of therapists and different styles, and somebody's might like click with you, and not just like personalities, which that's important too, but totally their whole style. Like somebody might be really directive and give you tasks and things like that, and that might feel really good. And then somebody might be more conversational focused, or less directive and really let you take control, and that might feel uncomfortable, right? So I would like really just remind you that like you deserve somebody who like makes you feel good and safe, because otherwise there's no point to therapy. But yeah, I think if you think it's like Freud on the couch, or like Freudian stuff with people laying on the couch, like that stuff does still exist and you can get that form of therapy, but a lot of therapy doesn't look like that. It's a lot of like,
you don't have a fancy couch.
I don't. I do walk and talk, and yeah, we walk outside and chat, or I get on and do telehealth. And so it's like really, the way that you see me right now is the way that I am as a therapist. It's a very authentic conversation. And it's, it's really like, it's about what the client needs and is looking for. And so it's really led by you, and it should be. But yeah, I mean, I guess I don't know what people do expect. But I think I'd like,
Enjoyed
for
on the
me,
couch.
right, yeah. It's yeah, it's not about like me telling you what to do or like diagnosing you, although I can technically do that, or like telling you like what's wrong with you or anything like that. It's about like being a person to hear your experiences and to like guide you through next steps, or just to like bear witness to your experience if you don't want any guidance. And it's not about like, yeah, me giving you like a list of things to do, or like putting you in a box. But it's also about like helping you gain awareness, and like helping you tune into yourself so that you have greater control. So like when you're noticing your own triggers or noticing your own emotions, then you can address them before they kind of get the better of you. So I do a lot of helping people tune into that stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. Great. Well, I guess kind of the last question I wanted to have is there anything you wish I had asked, or anything else you would like to add just about like who Sarah Strong is, about Fireweed counseling? Because you actually, yeah, can you give us a brief overview of what Fireweed is, how that started, and like how that fits into like just this amazing journey you're on as a human and athlete?
Yeah. So I'm a licensed clinical social worker here in Colorado. So just I can only work with Coloradans. So that's sort of like the bummer about being licensed, is like, hey, I have all these great, amazing qualifications. And actually that means that I get more regulatory oversight than somebody with no qualifications.
Wouldn't want you giving unlicensed snack breaks over state lines.
Right. Exactly. But yeah, so I have a private practice working with kiddos. I don't really work with younger than 3, because doing that over the internet is sort of hard and silly, but working with kiddos mostly 3 and up, and then working with adults and families. I do trail therapy and telehealth. And yeah, I just started Fireweed in December, but I've been a therapist since 2014. And starting Fireweed just gave me the opportunity to be at home with my kiddos and still like do what I love and stay connected to folks and have adult conversations. And yeah, I was super supported by Zoe when I like got this idea and decided to go for it. And yeah.
I want to make counseling mandatory for everyone to just do it, but alas, that's illegal. Probably good. Yeah.
Yeah.
Microcosm illegal counseling.
Right.
But yeah, I think it's just been so amazing. I think, it's kind of this like amazing thing of like making lemonade from some pandemic lemons, and like having a bunch of challenging career things. And around the same time that you ran this 100, you were launching your own business that just like combines your love of like being outside with your family, and like how that's benefited you personally and your kiddos, and being able to bring that to other people. And just I think it's so amazing. I want trail therapy.
Yes. I have to get better about scheduling it around my runs. That's what I need to figure out.
You'll just like be in the middle of a session with a client. And you're like, hold on, I got to do some strides.
I was very tired at the start of one of my runs. I was like, oh, I got to not have an hour-long trail therapy session before my run.
Yeah, that's so. Do you have a favorite trail in Boulder that you like to take people to? I'm imagining like, a really tough session being like going up Bear Peak and being like, let's really work this out.
No, but like Shanahan Ridge, I feel like is the best, because you can get like flat or a little bit more of a climb, and it's so pretty. And yeah, but I see it people all along the 93 corridor. So whatever's close to them, I try to be super flexible, and I get to see new places. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, that's all the questions I had. We'll be putting this recording up ASAP. And just, Sarah, thank you so much for sharing. You have so much knowledge and experience, and I'm just so grateful to have you on the team. I know personally I've learned so much from just, I mean, working through as a coach and a friend, and like seeing your stuff on social media, which I'll put in the YouTube links, because I think it's just super informative and should be like required reading for anyone trying to own and operate a human brain and body.
Yeah, I would say, like, I really do try to put a lot of information, especially on my Instagram. And like, I do think I give tips every week that are useful, and like, I just couldn't think of them off the top of my head, but I do have lots of little like 30-second videos with tons of like tips and tricks. So check those out. Yes. Yeah.
People can dive in even deeper to things and like do it on their own time, and, you know, maybe in the privacy of their own home, which is exciting too.
Yeah, absolutely.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Sarah. And thank you so much, everyone, for tuning in. And yeah, go take 5 minutes to meditate.
All right. Thanks, guys. Or just 3.
Even 3. You don't have to overshoot it, right?
Yeah.
All right. Bye. Have a great evening, everyone.